The French philosopher René Descartes said, "The reading of all good books is like a conversation with the finest minds of past centuries." On one level, that sounds really appealing. Who doesn't want to tap into the wisdom of the ages? But on the other, Descartes was an old, privileged, straight white man who was appreciating the philosophy of mostly old, privileged, straight white men. If we expand our survey to Eastern philosophies, we find practitioners with darker skin tones, but who were, by and large, privileged male and the product of a paternal social order that excluded most of the population. So if you're not male, privileged, white, or straight, or otherwise chafe at the constraints of modern society, you may question why you should care what these old men thought. What use could their philosophical ideas be, hobbled as they were by their prejudices and privilege? In this video, we're going to examine how the disadvantaged and radical changemakers alike have gained inspiration from philosophers of centuries past, found who they truly were and what they believed, and in many cases, went on to change the world. We'll start off with Frederick Douglass and his belief that ideas themselves could elevate us and set us free. Move to Malcolm X, who showed us that reading the ideas of old white men does not make us like them. And then Martin Luther King, who literally got a playbook on how to fight for civil rights from reading old philosophy. There are few better examples of how philosophy empowers than Frederick Douglass, who, as an enslaved black boy, taught himself to read with the help of his master's wife and some white children who'd been to school. When his master learned that Douglass could read, he chastised his wife. "If you teach that N-word how to read, there will be no keeping him. It will forever unfit him to be a slave." At that moment, Douglass came to understand that literacy and the ideas one could discover with it were powerful and a major advantage slaveholders held over blacks. Douglass later got a hold of a book of philosophical and political essays and speeches that contained the ideas of Socrates, Cicero, Benjamin Franklin, and George Washington, among other great doers and thinkers. "These were choice documents to me," Douglass wrote. "I read them over and over again with unabated interest. They gave tongue to interesting thoughts of my own soul which had frequently flashed through my mind and died away for want of utterance. The reading of these documents enabled me to utter my thoughts and to meet the arguments brought forward to sustain slavery, but while they relieved me of one difficulty, they brought on another even more painful than the one which I was relieved. The more I read, the more I was led to abhor and detest my enslavers. I could regard them in no other light than as a band of successful robbers who had left their homes and gone to Africa and stolen us from our homes, and in a strange land reduced us to slavery. I loathed them as being the meanest as well as the most wicked of men." Douglass, of course, went on to become one of the nation's greatest spokesmen for abolition, rallying the critical mass of Northern supporters who eventually brought their weight to bear against the South during the Civil War. There is an assumption that studying the ideas of old white men can make your mind a carbon copy of those men, but example after example belies this assumption. Malcolm X grew up steeped in the civil rights movement. His parents fought and protested for equality and taught him to be proud of his race. But he became disillusioned with the racism that kept him from pursuing a legal education and moving past menial labor. Feeling hopeless, he turned to drug dealing, racketeering, and robbery. Arrested for robbery and sentenced to time in prison, Malcolm found himself with time on his hands. He thought deeply about society and its problems, but grew frustrated with his inability to articulate a path forward for black society. He began a course of study with the dictionary to expand his vocabulary, but soon started reading philosophy, religion, and history. "My homemade education gave me, with every additional book that I read, a little bit more sensitivity to the deafness, dumbness, and blindness that was afflicting the black race in America," he said. This education didn't turn Malcolm X into a carbon copy of the old white men whose ideas he was reading. He adopted an inflammatory rhetoric of militant resistance to discrimination that was all his own. He was able to do this because no one loses who they are when they read philosophy. Reading philosophy is like eating food. We don't become what we eat, we digest our food, and it helps build us up to make us who we uniquely are. This growth also helps set us free from our ignorance. Many think that if we're born in a country with good laws, we're automatically free from birth. That's true in a certain light, but that's also like saying that we're free in the supermarket where we can buy any food we choose. If we don't know how to cook, if we don't understand what foods will leave us healthy, and if we don't have the discipline to choose the right foods for us and our families, then how free are we really? What good will freedom even do us? Philosophical ideas are the same. We're all free to pursue our goals regardless of education, but philosophy gives us a framework to help decide what's worth pursuing and how we might get there. It also keeps us on track when the going gets rough. Both King and Malcolm X read many of the same philosophers, considered their ideas, but ultimately came to vastly different conclusions about how to make use of their insights. On the day before his death, in his famous "I've been to the mountaintop" speech, King spoke of his desire to go back in time to ancient Greece to see Plato, Aristotle, Socrates, Euripides, and Aristophanes as they discussed the great and external issues of reality. Most people have heard that King got his idea of nonviolent protest from Gandhi, but he got as much or more of his strategies from ancient Greek philosophy. First, he took the idea of agape, which King defines as understanding, creative, redeeming goodwill for all men. It is the overflowing love which seeks nothing in return. It is purely spontaneous, unmotivated, groundless, and creative. It is the love of God operating in the human heart. Agape, King argued, was at the heart of all he did in his civil rights strategy. He took another critical idea from Socrates. In Letter from Birmingham Jail, King addresses pastors who told him his protests were a mistake. Quote, "Just as Socrates felt that it was necessary to create a tension in the mind so that individuals could rise from the bondage of myths and half-truths to the unfettered realm of creative analysis and objective appraisal," King wrote, "so must we see the need for nonviolent gadflies to create the kind of tension in society that will help men rise from the dark depths of prejudice and racism to the majestic heights of understanding and brotherhood." The image of a gadfly is drawn from the Apology, a speech given by Socrates in defense of the charge that he was corrupting the young men of Athens with his provocative teaching. Socrates argued that flies such as he were annoying, but Athens citizens needed such pestering to stir them to action and improve their character. And so King turned himself and his marchers into gadflies that would not let racists, nor those who stood by and did nothing while blacks were abused, rest. He would buzz around until they awoke and took action. King's desire to commune with ancient philosophers made sense because in many cases they were the rebels of their day. At a time when slavery was rampant and women were second-class citizens, Zeno of Citium, the founder of Stoicism, was arguing that slavery was immoral and that women should be educated in philosophy and given status equal to that of men. He said it was everyone's duty to participate in their government and live according to virtue. An insistence on speaking truth to power had consequences, as we can see by how often Roman emperors executed or exiled Stoic and Cynic philosophers. They were gadflies who publicly questioned imperial authority and refused to be silenced. Often, like King and Malcolm X, they paid with their lives, but not without leaving a mark. Don't go looking to ancient philosophers for modern politically correct positions. They had different concerns and many of their stances are anachronistic. But if you want to shake up the world, there are few better starting places than examining the ideas of these men and women who shook their world to its core and inspired some of the greatest rebels of our own time. Hey guys, this is Andrew Perlott. Thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed the video. Whether you want to change the world or you're just looking to be more resilient in the face of whatever life throws at you, check out my free course, Breakthrough Week. In it, you'll get the philosophical tools that some of history's greatest men and women have used to stay calm, be more productive, and thrive in a hectic world. Check out the links in the video notes below.